How do the ethics of prison differ from those in the outside world?
Because you're either a fish or you're a shark. And when new people come in, that's one of the terminologies is you call them is you're fresh fish. You know, who are they? What are they about? Yada, yada, yada. How can we exploit that?
Hi, I'm Chuck Braverman. This is another episode of Westdoc Online. Today is a little different episode because we're going to make it a little shorter because we're going to do a special follow-up with a live Q&A with the filmmaker and a special guest on February 19th at Bucks County Community College in Pennsylvania at the Zlock Performing Arts Center at Bucks County Community College. And Bucks County is renowned for the arts coming out of Bucks County. It used to be a center for Broadway shows to try out, and Bucks County Community College has a terrific arts center there. And we're going to go there, and there are tickets available to come see the full film that we're discussing today, meet the filmmaker, and a very special guest or two. So let me introduce the producer-director of the film, Eden Wurmfeld. How are you, Eden? Nice seeing you.
I'm very well. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
That's great. Me too. How did this film, Classroom 4, happen? How did it get started?
Thank you for that question. So the professor in the film, Dr. Rico Hillier, and I met in 7th grade. When I was 11, I think she was already 12. But I have been really learning from her and knowing her gift as a teacher my whole life. And when she first did the training for the Inside Out Prison Exchange, which allowed her to teach history inside prisons to half incarcerated students and half liberal arts students, she would tell me in detail about what was happening in the classroom, and she was so blown away by the power of the encounter between these two seemingly unlikely groups. And things aligned for us to bring cameras in to CRCI in the spring of 2023. And at that time, we didn't know we would make a film. We sought to document what was happening for archival purposes. And what became clear over the course of the semester was that the students really wanted the experience to be amplified beyond those four walls and available to viewers, and wanted a film made. And that is what became Classroom 4.
So what I didn't say before, which I should have said, was the film really is quite unique. It's about 15 students from the local college. What's the name of the college in
Lewis
Portland?
and Clark College.
Lewis and Clark, of course. 15 students, which are called the outside students, meet 15 students, which are the inside students, once a week for, I believe, 15 weeks.
That's right.
And I've spent a bunch of time in prisons for doing documentary films, thankfully never locked up. My wife actually was a volunteer at California Institute for Women, and we ended up making a film there about one of the women that she got to know. And this prison, of course, ironically, it doesn't really look like a prison in that classroom, does it? It looks more like a college classroom in a way, but it certainly reveals itself many times over. And by the way, the professor, Rico Hillier, is a major reason that the film is so successful, I think. She's so bright, articulate, and compassionate that you're on her side the whole time. So what was it like being inside the prison when you first walked in, and the students the first week especially?
Well, I think that something that really amazed me about the experience of making this was how nervous everybody was, including me, on the first day. You know, I'd never been inside a prison. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I would be able to kind of make relationships with the inside students. I've had apprehension about that. I think that the nerves are apparent among all the classmates. They're nervous for different reasons. And I just was so struck by how those nerves fell away and walls came down, trust was built, relationships were created, many of which have endured since the spring of 2023. It was just remarkable and so moving to be part of that. And what I think, I hope outside audience is, what I see happens is that outside audience is able to go on a similar journey to that of the outside students, where even though it's compressed into 40 minutes, not 3 hours every week for 15 weeks, that in many ways they're kind of able to experience what it was like to be in that semester.
There's a great deal of desensitization that comes with doing time. I can't tell you when the last time was that I made a phone call and wished anybody happy birthday. Somebody said something today about it being Friday, and that means nothing to me because Friday's no different than Monday or Wednesday. Every day's the same for me.
Do the prisoners get college credit for taking the class or no?
Yes, they can. And in fact, one of the students, James Reed, for whom the class we filmed was the first college level class that he ever took, when I went back into the prison, he said, taking these classes is very unpopular, and it took me a really long time to get myself into that room. It's not considered cool. And I finally did it. And since then, I've gotten 30 college credits, and I was a teaching assistant for Dr. Hillier last semester, and he got out this past fall of 25. He's no longer incarcerated, and he's applying to get his BA at Lewis and Clark.
But also crucial in my, like what Chop said, we're able to look forward to every Friday. Like, I'm actively doing school for the first time in probably about 12 years, and I'm loving it. And that's totally new for me. Like, I don't do school. I barely graduated high school.
I do think that for some students, this is a complete game changer in terms of their relationship to education and to learning. And it's a really amazing opportunity. And these classes, by the way, this is a global program. It's not unique to Lewis and Clark or to Rako Hillier, who's teaching the class. Any college professor can take the training and then teach a class in a prison, and it could be any discipline. It happens that Rako is teaching a class where the lived experience of the inside students is very relevant to the course conversation and the course content, but that's not necessarily so. You know, they have math classes, literature classes, art classes, everything. Any professor could do it.
So I forgot to mention, which is kind of important, that your film is shortlisted for the Academy Awards in the documentary short branch. There's this relatively new category called shortlisted, which only existed the last 4 or 5 years before the nominations. And so in the feature world, there were 201 films submitted. I know that. In the doc short, it was something less than that, but probably 150. And I think they pick a dozen or 15.
15, yeah.
15 to be called shortlisted, which is very prestigious in its own right. So congratulations.
Thank you, Chuck. We're thrilled. We're thrilled and honored to be in this space, and we'll see if we make the next hurdle.
That's one way of looking at it. I noticed you have 2 or 3 very experienced documentary producers that were aiding you, plus a fairly well-known actor named Edward Norton, who's credited executive producer. How did he get involved, and what was his involvement?
Edward got involved because he's an old friend, and really of Rako primarily. But because Rako and I have known each other so long, I've known him a long time as well. but they went to college together, and he also had been a history major in college, and he wanted to be supportive, and so he's been very generous.
One of the other shortlisted films in the feature area is a prison film called The Alabama Solution, which we did an episode on.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, with Andrew Jarecki. It couldn't be any more different.
I know. I was at a party for the Alabama Solution, or a gathering where we got to hear from Andrew and his co-director and one of the producers, and somebody said to me, "You have the happy prison movie," and I was like, "I don't know that I would say that, but I do think that there's a lot of heart and hope in this film, and I hope that people feel that." There's a lot of pain too, but
what was the biggest surprise for you about making this film?
Well, because my biggest surprise was how deep the sense of connection that developed among the classmates was, and how seemingly fast that happened. It was shocking to me. And I attribute a lot of that to Reiko and her ability to put people at ease, have people feel part of something bigger than themselves, allow everybody to feel smart and like they have something important to contribute. And also I attribute it just to all the students who were brave enough to show up and let their guard down. And I think it's not easy for either group, particularly the inside students, because being vulnerable when you're in prison is not always safe. And I know that it was scary for a lot of those students at first for that reason. And I've heard a lot of them speak about how vulnerable they allowed themselves to be in the room, but how they had to kind of comport themselves to go back out into the prison population week to week and survive. So that was all just really mind-blowing to me, their bravery and their heart. And as a filmmaker, or on the film side, I would say the thing that has surprised me in a most gratifying and happy way is audience response to this film. I just, when you make something, you're always inside it, and you can never have the opportunity to see it for the first time. I'll never be in that position. And hearing from viewers after they've seen the movie it's been a consistent thing that has happened at festivals, where people are, I can tell, very deeply moved, both emotionally, but also in their thinking. It's as though something was kind of turned on its ear. And I think that because we work in documentary, and it's a self-selecting group of people who tend to watch documentaries, that even if this film never makes it outside the choir, and I certainly hope it does, and we're trying to have it amplify beyond the natural audience for documentary, that I can say this is true of myself. I am a member of that choir. I do watch documentaries. I might be labeled as a kind of progressive type. And a lot of my own preconceived notions about who's in prison and what it's like in prison, and could I talk to a prison? All these things were dispelled in the course of making the film. And I think that a lot of that is happening for viewers, outside viewers as well. And I find that surprising and also incredibly exciting.
There's a moment in the film when one of the prisoners, one of the inside students, says to one of the outside students something like, "Did you take the tour?" And they say, "Yeah, we took the tour." And then he says, "Of course, you didn't get to really see the real prison. You only saw the good part, the shiny part." I'm just wondering, did you get off camera to walk around and see the other side of the world, so to speak? And I assume, by the way, that's a low security prison in general, or that section is, right?
Yeah, so CRCI is what's called a release facility. So everybody there will get out, and it's a combination of people who, some of whom have relatively short sentences, like somewhere from a year to 3 years, and those who are finishing a much longer sentence and because of good behavior, what have you, they've been moved to this minimum security facility for the last 2 to 3 years of their sentence. And something, well, so at the very beginning of the film, when you see the student Chops, he's sitting on his bed, and then he gathers his books and he heads to class. I don't know if we were supposed to be in there, but that was the living facility and part of the prison. And you see that it's an open room with many cot-style beds. And something that I learned from some of the, like Nick Five Oaks, for example, who had been incarcerated for 16 years, he's now out. He said that it's thought of as a good thing when you're moved to this release facility, but that in many ways he preferred being in a facility where he had a cell because he had more privacy. You hear in the film that, they live often in rooms with up to 72 people, and their cots like very close to one another. They haven't any privacy. They have no space for any belongings. I don't think you're allowed to have much of your belongings anyway, but it's not an easy environment to be in, and one might think that it's good to be in a low security prison, and I'm sure there are aspects of it that may be better than being in a max or a medium, but I did hear consistently from some of the inside students that the living circumstances there were challenging.
What was the logistics for you? You live on the East Coast. I think you're speaking from Brooklyn right now. Is that right?
Yes, I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
And did you have to? Were you living in Portland, or did you just fly back and forth every couple of weeks?
There, we did not film every week. We probably filmed maybe 7 or 8 of the 15 classes, and I was there for 5 or 6 of those shoots. I think there was one where I sent the camera and sound folks and wasn't there. But these things, goes with the territory of the work. I mean, it was not that big a deal. I've done other projects that aren't based in New York City, and you just go.
And did you hear? Wouldn't surprise me when you showed after you missed a week and you showed up and one of the guys said, "Oh, you should have been here last week." You have no idea what happened, right?
Well, I would hear that more from Reiko than from the students. But there was one week in particular that we very much wanted to film, and the prison couldn't accommodate us because they do surveil you, and it requires more staff be allocated to the film crew. So I'm not underestimating the burden on the prison, and I am grateful to them for allowing us. But there were times when we weren't allowed in because it wasn't convenient for them, and so.
How much footage did you shoot in hours, roughly? Do you know?
I would say it probably was around 50 hours total that we had, and I have to say there were a lot of amazing things that got left behind. But I felt very strongly that the film should be short, and I wanted it, in fact, to be much shorter than it is, and I tried hard to make it shorter, but I ended up reinstating some scenes that I took out in an effort to make it shorter. But the reason why I wanted it to be short is because I really wanted it to be able to live in the outreach, impact, and educational space as robustly as possible, and I have spent so much of my career making social issue movies that are feature length, and it's much harder to get classes to watch them, to get communities to put a panel together and have a talk around them. And so it was a real exercise in discipline of the edit to keep it under 40 minutes or less.
Well, we're going to keep this interview shorter because we're going to continue the interview in part 2 on February 19th at Bucks County Community College at the Zlock Performing Arts Center. at 7 p.m. We're going to see the whole film. We're going to have the filmmaker there, Eden, and perhaps a surprise guest or two. So thank you very much, Eden, for being a guest. And
thank you,
we'll
Chuck.
see you then.
Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on February 19th.